So, welcome to another episode. Today, me and Robman are going to be looking at the entire Strider series. Here we go.
So amazingly enough, with the Strider games, my personal experiences with it basically centered around the NES, and I didn't know about an arcade or any other version until I met Happy Console Gamer, and we started gaming together, and he showed them to me. So it's an incredible series that I had no idea about.
That's really unusual, because my first experience was in 1989, and I walked into an arcade, and I saw this game like in the corner, and I was like, what is this? Like, it had such style, it was so cool, had a really awesome main character, and it took place in Russia. That's the kind of environment that it was, and I was like, man, what is this game? And later, obviously, we find out it's by Capcom, and then it spawned all the rest of these games. So when I saw Strider in that arcade that first time, it was really the beginning of the great Capcom years of arcade games to come. It kind of was signaling all the rest in. We had Forgotten Worlds at the time, things like that, but man, Strider was the beginning of a whole new era for Capcom. So a lot of people don't know the history of Strider and where the main character came from. It actually started as a manga.
That's right. It was originally printed in monthly comp comics in Japan by a guy named Moto Kikaku, and the series revolved around the greatest of these elite anti-terrorists, the Striders, and his name was Hiryu.
Yeah.
And he created the trademark style and appearance and wrote of his adventures trying to thwart evil. This really interested Capcom.
The first game, the arcade game, is not really based on the comic book. It's kind of their own version of it. They kind of went their own direction of it. And Strider doesn't have the scarf. He does in the comic book. He doesn't in the first game, which is interesting.
Yep, when Capcom did all the design work and concept work, which you can find in a lot of the art collections now, you'll always see him wearing the trademark red scarf. But for games, he didn't in any of the arcade or home console iterations until Strider 2, but we'll get into that later. The NES game, however, was an incredible story based more on the manga and very different from the arcade. I remember playing it the first time. My parents rented it for me, and it was one game that I could not finish in a single sitting because it was an adventure story, not just a straight slasher. You had a choice of different locales around the world you could go to, and you had to travel to each one several times, getting more and more information about the enemy plot and about the dangers, and while fighting all of these different bosses and bad guys. So it was really fun and almost like a beginning to the Mega Man idea of selecting your level in your own time and choosing which way to flow through the game, which led from there into Strider, the Genesis version, and Strider, the PC Engine version, which I know you played the heck out of.
Absolutely. I remember when Strider came out on the Genesis, it was huge. It was a really big game for the Genesis. It was 8 megs in size, and at the time, that was massive. That was crazy. But it really shows. The graphics are amazing on the Genesis. It was a really, really great game. There wasn't a lot of levels. It didn't equal the arcade game. It wasn't as perfect as that, but I mean, on the Genesis, this was the best version we were going to get. Strider on the Genesis was a fantastic port. Next, we got a promise that Strider was going to come out on the Super Graphics in Japan. It never came out. We waited a long time, never heard anything about it. Finally, we got a version using the arcade card on the PC Engine. Now, the PC Engine version is a nice version using the arcade card, but the graphics aren't as high resolution as, say, the Genesis version, which is a bit of a surprise. But how they made up for it on the PC Engine was by giving you an extra level and giving you cinematics, which weren't in the Genesis version or the arcade version. Alright, after all those versions of the game, we get to what we call the black sheep in the series. Why is it that every series of video games has one of those black sheeps in it? That kind of like, the series is so good and then we have this really unusual game. And that game is Strider Returns on the Genesis.
Ouch. Yes, it is. Part of the reason is because, just like with the Metal Gear series, there was one that wasn't made by the creators of Metal Gear. This game was not made by Capcom. It was barely a Strider game. The main character isn't Hiryu, it's Hijo. The graphics were different, they were muddy, they were terrible, the music was awful.
Gameplay was really bad.
Gameplay was choppy, it wasn't challenging, it was just badly done.
I know, I remember I went to a friend of mine's place back in the day and we played it, I'm like, is this the same Strider?
But we did, however, get an excellent sequel, the one we all wanted and deserved, in Strider 2.
Yeah, Strider 2 actually got it right. And Capcom kind of went back to the drawing board and started to use some of the new technology for the PlayStation 1, meaning that it actually had 3D backgrounds. And wow, it really showed, it really looked nice. Now, the unusual thing is, it's not very long, but you can pick your levels, you can choose your own adventure kind of way through it. But I remember I played it when it first came out, and you could finish it in one sitting. It was like, wow, that was a great game, but it's over. And that was the only sad thing about Strider 2. It was over too quickly. The levels were very short. The bosses, it had some really interesting bosses though. That was, it had some things going for it. The music was really good too. So just a little side note about Strider. This is kind of a funny note. If you actually open up the disc and the disc inside, there's 2 discs. We have Strider 1, the actual arcade perfect copy, and Strider 2. But you know what's funny about this? They got the labels mixed up when they printed these. So on Strider 2 is actually the arcade game of Strider 1, and on Strider 1 we have Strider 2. So it was a little bit confusing the first time I put these games in.
So another nice thing, as we mentioned before, was that for Strider 2, they brought back the original design work and gave him back his red scarf.
And that's what everybody knows Strider Hero by that red scarf now. Nobody remembers him that he used to not have a scarf on.
That's not the end of the story for our good friend Strider Hero. He showed up in quite a few other games. Well, a few other games. Yeah. Most notably the Marvel vs. Capcom series, both 1 and 2. Yeah. He was a playable character for the fighting games. And of course, he was in the Namco X Capcom strategy RPG.
Yeah, but that's a fun game. That's really cool. There's a lot of old characters like in that, like Arthur and all that from Ghouls and Ghosts and stuff like that. Really great game. So there's been some rumors out there on the web that they're, Capcom's thinking about doing a Strider remake, a HD remake. Those are complete rumors at this point, but that'd be awesome if they did that, eh? The only way you can really play Strider is if you get it on the original Genesis or the PC Engine, or you get the original NES version. But you can also get the original NES version on this Capcom Classics Mini Mix on the Game Boy Advance. And it actually has Strider on here, Bionic Commando, and Mighty Final Fight. So guys, something else that's really exciting to me is I was kind of searching around in the closet a couple of days ago, and I pulled out an old book of some of the old comic books I used to do back in high school. And the reason why I pulled it out for this episode is that, I hope you can see this here, is I used to do after I saw the arcade game of Strider, I started to do my own versions of the comic book. Basically my own Strider. And it's just so funny, I did all these different versions of it. It's so funny, I did like Strider Hero on a Russian submarine, and I don't know why he's on the submarine, but the submarine shoots at him, shoots itself and sinks. Like, I was a young kid at the time. That's to say 20 years ago I did these comics. I was so inspired by the arcade game that I really wanted to share this with you guys. I think it's so neat. So it's funny, when I was thinking about doing a review show, this was another series on the front lines that had to be reviewed and had to be looked at. I've always wanted to have a look back on this series. We've always enjoyed this series. We've been talking about it for years. It's always been great. It's a wonderful series. It's got a lot of great action and a lot of things going for it, if you discount Strider Returns. So, yeah. Honestly, all in all, one of the best franchises, another smash hit for Capcom. These guys are just hit makers. Yeah, totally. What a franchise this is. And maybe in the future, they'll continue the franchise. That's what the rumors are at this point. So, anyways, guys, until next time.